This episode of the Golf Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is presented by WynnBET. Bet $100 at WynnBET, you get a $100 free bet. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET to claim your free bet today. We're also brought to you by the SGPN merch store. Use the promo code NFC Beast for 15% off. Active until the Eagles or Giants lose their next game. Welcome, everybody, to the Golf Gambling Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Shermer, and you're just seeing me tonight. It's a very special night for Boston Capper. His Patriots are on Monday Night Football, and he had a little bit of a rough day. We were going back and forth about whether he really wanted to do a show. First of all, go back to last week, did not want to do a show. It's a terrible field, which I'll get to in a little bit. And then I think he's just using the fact that the Patriots are on. Apparently his friend brought him a really nice steak from Publix. The fine grocery store where all the best cuisine is in Publix. So he's actually has the night off. So it's just me tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a different show tonight, though. We'll go over the Bermuda Championship for a little bit, but then we're not going to go over DFS for Bermuda for a reason I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Instead, I'm going to attempt to seriously break down the LIV Miami team event this week. I understand that everyone is in their camps with LIV. For me, though, I mean, I'm not really on social media. I'm not part of the discussion. I just kind of see it for what it is. And I'm just going to acknowledge, especially in a week where the PGA Tour doesn't really seem like it cares about its product, especially coming after last week, which we'll get to in a little bit. It doesn't really seem like it cares about product quality right now, especially in the fall. So we're going to talk about LIV. It's a big event for them. It's their championship. There's some odds out. You can gamble on it. So we're going to talk about it. But, first, why don't we go over the Bermuda? And then tomorrow night, we're going to have Boston Capper back. We're going to have Matt Gannon, our newest writer for Sports Gambling Podcast as well, our golf guy. He's also going to join us for the show. We're going to break down our betting card. That's when we'll discuss the Bermuda Championship. But why don't we get to the field first? And but Capper and I were talking about it. And this is probably the worst field we have broken down or handicapped since we started doing the show. We're 196 episodes in. This is basically a middle of the road Corn Ferry event. Not even some of the better Corn Ferry guys who just graduated here, like, Taylor Montgomery. He has a lot of FedEx Cup points. He's not here. Dean Burmester, I think he finished top 3 at Sanderson. He's not here either. Justin Suh, who's still very high in the priority rankings, he's not here. So the fact that a lot of the top Corn Ferry rookies decide to skip this event is kind of an indictment of what you get this week. And this is coming off of just a really embarrassing weekend for the PGA Tour. I mean, listen, they got their grand champion, Rory McIlroy, claiming the -- 1 title, really star-studded field. Like, that was really setting up for the PGA Tour, especially after we all kind of crapped on LIV in Jeddah. Kind of the joke of a playoff that was Brooks Koepka versus Peter Uihlein, trying to compare those guys, driving up storylines about how, both those guys toiled in the European Tour. And, and that event kind of fell flat. And the PGA Tour had basically on a silver platter an all-star event in the fall. Yes, there's football and everything. But as you probably have heard some other podcasts, and I'm going to add on to shoveling dirt on PGA Tour's grave, it's pretty egregious that they didn't have PGA Tour live. It was surprising to me when I found out on Thursday that I just assumed because it's in the United States that we were going to have it. And they didn't. What I think probably happened was there probably is an issue with a contract with ESPN Plus and the PGA Tour. Probably when they signed it back last year, they said ESPN Plus isn't obligated, or the PGA Tour isn't obligated maybe to carry PGA Tour live when they go internationally, which makes sense. I get it. I mean, it's stupid. They can always fly their equipment over. It's a cost-cutting move, but that's their choice, and we've always had that. But the fact that not only was this a star event, but it's in the United States, and that's a real good opportunity for the PGA Tour to really take a step forward and say, hey, like, we're better than LIV. And it's also a good opportunity for ESPN Plus to actually sell subscriptions. I think they probably would have jumped at the opportunity of promoting an event with Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, and Jon Rahm. And it doesn't seem like the PGA Tour really picked up the phone and bothered to maybe amend the contract, get the lawyers together. So they punted. And the only coverage that we got all weekend was just a 3-hour window from about 3 to 6 on Thursday and Friday. I understand it's tough this time of year. I know that golf is a tiny speck on the sports landscape, but this isn't really about that. It's about just incompetence. And the PGA Tour is under siege, whether you want to admit it or not. LIV is getting players. They're going to get more players. They're not going away. And now is not the time to really cheap out on your product, PGA Tour, and just shit all over your fans. I'll just say it. Like the people who watch PGA Tour live are people like me and Capper and gamblers, and you're basically probably drawing about the same viewership as you would at the Byron Nelson. You have a pretty loyal base who's going to tune in whatever, and to not have it, to kind of just cheap out on it, which is essentially what the PGA Tour did, it speaks volumes. And then we're going to have this week where literally no one is showing up. I think the best player in the field, ranking wise, is probably Seamus Power. I think the best player is Thomas Dietrich. I think he's playing the best. I think he's not just any Corn Ferry rookie. He's a European Tour vet. He's been close to winning a couple times in the European Tour. I just got Mark Hubbard. You have SH Kim, who almost won the Shriners. You got Denny McCarthy, who is the betting favorite. It's laughable that he's the betting favorite, but that's what we're dealing with this week. And once again, we're not going to have PGA Tour live. We're not going to have Shot Link for the next 2 weeks either. And it's not a good week. It's just how it is. It's tough for gambling. It's tough for viewing. It's tough to be a fan of the PGA Tour right now. So that's why we're not going to cover DFS tonight. On one hand, I don't really feel like telling you that Mark Hubbard's a good play at $10,000. It's Mark Hubbard. He's going to be very popular. He's been playing well, but he's $10,000. And honestly, there's really not much to discuss under $7,000. So just like the PGA Tour is kind of punting on the fall, I'm going to punt on DFS. But I'm still going to break down the course, still break down everything else for you because you can bet on it. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And we're going to take a little break first, and then I will start going into the course. So we're brought to you by WinBet. So are you thinking about joining WinBet? Bet $100 and get a $100 free bet. WinBet is biggest. You can join the WinBet's biggest winners club. Whoever hits the biggest parlay on WinBet odds-wise gets a $100,000 free bet. WinBet truly is hashtags DGenerates only. Plus, use the WinBet's build your own bet to build some amazing same game parlays. There's a lot to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamingpodcast.com/WinBet so they know that we sent you. At sportsgamingpodcast/WINNBET to claim your free bet today. Office subject to change, terms and conditions at winbet.com. Also 20 or older and present in the state where playthrough WinBet is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, well, why don't we talk about Port Royal Golf Course, Golf Club. That's where the Bermuda Championship is going to be this week. And then we'll just go over some general batting strategies, and then we'll go from there. So, I'm sorry, I just got breaking news. James Robinson traded to the Jets, for anybody interested out there. All right, so the golf course. So Port Royal was founded in 1965, and basically it was there was a dispute between the existing property owners, which I think is actually, it might be the government of Bermuda, to be honest, and a couple farmers around the area. Basically, there was a stubborn farmer who didn't want to sell a piece of land. It's towards about the north end of the property. There's a par 5 and a short par 3 and a par 4 over there. Basically, that was all agricultural fields, and he didn't want to get rid of it. So finally, they negotiated a settlement with him, and the golf course was completed in 1969 by Robert Trent Jones. And as far as the layout goes, listen, it's not all that exciting, at least like tee to green. Like some of the routing of it. It's fine. It's kind of what you usually expect from Robert Trent Jones. A lot of dog legs, some pinching at the fairways with some bunkers. It's fine. But I think what makes the golf course special is the land itself is really good. Basically, it's the clubhouse sits basically right on top of a hill, and the golf course just kind of sprawls downhill from all directions. So starting on number 1, it's a downhill tee shot. It's basically like a 9-degree par 4. It's about 250, 260 to the middle. Probably not. You might be able to hit driver. You would really want to cut the corner, but and then it goes uphill, comes back downhill, and then it goes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Just really good undulation, elevation changes to this piece of property. Sometimes like you're going to have a club in your hand, it might be 115 yards on the scorecard, but if it's playing about 50, 60 feet uphill, it's some of these holes are, you got to adjust there. You're going to have to really rely on your caddy this week and have good numbers. It's got really good views of the Atlantic Ocean as well. It's right on the coast. Number 16 longer par 3 right along the coast there. It's a really picturesque hole. Just looks really nice to play there. Definitely someplace where, if you're just looking to have a round, have a good, view of the ocean, it's definitely for you. It's a really short course though. It's only about 6,850 yards on the scorecard. I think it's the second shortest on the PGA Tour behind one of the golf courses on the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. I forget which one. But the wind can be a big factor at this place. And that's why it has to be this short, is because, if you get a big gale coming off the Atlantic Ocean, if you're playing into the wind, like, this thing can get pretty long in a hurry. And then you'll have some tricky crosswinds too. This can definitely be a tough course to play when the weather conditions are pretty tough. You saw that last year in the final round of the Bermuda Championship that Lucas Herbert won. I think in the middle of it, it just started raining. It was going sideways. Like, it was actually kind of an entertaining final round to watch, even though the field was, it was better than what we're going to see this year. But it was actually entertaining, and I was actually really excited to hopefully maybe get a couple guys, maybe with some connections to the Butterfield Bank, maybe with some of the English guys to come over and play it. Maybe they could get in the mix. But c'est la vie. So it's short for a reason. They also have to keep the greens pretty slow here because if there's wind, basically the golf course is kind of unplayable. It's also Bermuda grass tee to green. The greens are Tiff Eagle greens, which I'll get to a little bit. There's a couple other golf courses that have Tiff Eagle Bermuda if you really want to dive into that. But overall, though, this is kind of going to come down to how the weather is. I think on Thursday, the weather's going to be pretty nasty. I think they're going to get some rain, some wind. Friday, Saturday, Sunday don't look too tough, but that can change in a hurry. So definitely, if you are playing DFS this week, definitely watch the weather report. You might want to maybe get advantage of some wind splits, even if you're construction your betting card too. If there's a wave that is definitely going to get punished, definitely build your card around that too, especially with a cut this week. That could be a big difference between a really good week and not. So, all right. So what about some betting strategy? So, once again, this kind of worst case scenario for gamblers. There's not any shot link data, so strokes gain history to draw upon. You're basically just going with, just the 3 tournaments they've had there, which you probably haven't watched because it's in the fall and they don't really do a great job of coverage. And just some rudimentary stats like greens and regulation, driving accuracy, but there's still a story to tell. We were able to do that for the Zozo pretty successfully. So why don't we just go into what we know about the Bermuda Championship in Port Royal, and then we'll get to it. So, another thing too is, like, even if we had like strokes gain data, like, this field is so bad that, like, let's take your 25th best ball striker out of 144 guys. Like, am I going to trust them? Probably not. Chances are they're probably more like the 85th best ball striker on the PGA Tour, based on the field strength. So if you had stats, like, who cares? They could show up and play like a bum. So, all right. So why don't we talk about the greens first? Once I mentioned that it's Bermuda grass tee to green. The greens are Tiff Eagle Bermuda. Generally speaking, if you just want to look at Bermuda putting stats, you can do that. But there are 6 golf courses that they play on the PGA Tour, or they have played, that uses Tiff Eagle Bermuda greens, this particular strain. The Plantation course at Kapalua, that's one. Albany Golf Course, where they have the Hero World Challenge too. Sea Island has Tiff Eagle. I think only on the Seaside course, though. I don't know about the Plantation course. It might be both. But Sea Island, that's 3. PGA National for the Honda Classics 4. Bay Hill, they have Tiff Eagle Bermuda greens, that's 5. And Concession Golf Club with the WGC Workday back in 2021. The only problem is that because this field is so weak, probably a lot of these guys have never played Kapalua or Albany because they're just not worth inviting to an 18-person exhibition, or probably didn't play Concession either. But a lot of this field probably has played Sea Island. They probably played PJ National. They probably played Bay Hill because, especially Sea Island and PJ National, those don't draw as good of fields. Chances are a lot of those guys have probably played those places a lot. So if you really want to dig into the nitty gritty of putting stats, probably look at Sea Island, look at PJ National, probably look at Bay Hill. If these guys have played the other 3 as well, you can look at that too. But Probably in general, you're probably just going to go with just Bermuda. Let's talk about driving and off the tee performance at the Barfield Bermuda Championship. Pretty low rates of hitting the fairway. A lot of that has to do with the narrowness of the fairways. And a lot of it has to do with the wind. A lot of nasty crosswinds. It's hard to keep the ball in the fairway. So last year, the driving accuracy rate was only about 56%. In 2020, it was 49%. They got some really heavy winds, I think, all 4 days. And 2019 is about 54%. So right there, it's you're not going to see a whole ton of guys hit the fairway, but we can kind of look at the winners and we can kind of see how they did it. So Brendan Todd and Brian Gay, just really in general, very accurate drivers of the ball. They were among the leaders in driving accuracy on the week when they won. Brendan Todd won in 2019, Brian Gay won in 2020. But Lucas Herbert, though, he's a bomber. He's a very inaccurate bomber. He was well below average for driving accuracy. So, it might want to suggest that you might want to target extremes, either target a guy who is just going to hit a lot of fairways. Maybe they have a pretty good wedge game too, or target a bomber and a guy who's just going to get himself a little closer to the green, especially with some of the windier conditions, and can gouge out of the Bermuda rough and get onto the green and maybe get high with a putter. We've seen that success work. Lucas Herbert won last year. Taylor Pendrith was in the mix to win the Bermuda Championship last year too. Wyndham Clark lost in a playoff to Brian Gay. That's basically right there. That playoff kind of encapsulates, I think, what I'm looking for this week. Is you got Brian Gay, short hitting, accurate, really good putter, and you got Wyndham Clark, bomber, inaccurate, good putter though, which we'll get to putting in a little bit. So yeah, I think I'm going to target some extremes this week as far as off the tee. Basically anything in the middle, like you're just kind of average in distance, or you're not very accurate, or you're really short and you're not very accurate, or or you're middle of the road there. You might have I bet on a couple guys this week that fit that criteria, but in general, unless you had something else going for you, which it's hard to find in this field, I probably skipped over you. What about green regulations rates? So even though, just in general, if you're missing a lot of greens on the PGA Tour, you're not hitting a lot of greens. If you're missing a lot of fairways on the PGA Tour, if it's high rates of hitting out of the rough, chances are you're not really going to hit a whole lot of greens. And you kind of see that here. They're a little below PGA Tour average as far as the green regulation rate, but they're close. They're close to average. So in 2021, the green regulation rate was 64%. In 2020, it was 61%. In 2019, it was about 67%. So even though, you have a lot of guys generally hitting a lot from the rough, the green regulation rate wasn't all that low, which probably means to me that it's not very penal rough to get out of, especially even for a shorter hitter, probably just because, it is a shorter golf course. It's not like going to a Torrey Pines where a Brendan Todd might have to gouge a 3-iron out of deep rough. It's oh God. I was just told my camera's off. So hold on. All right. Well, I'm just going to continue. So, so basically, the fact that there's low green and regulation rates, or average green and regulation rates, you could still, you're not discounting a lot of those shorter hitters. So, as far as guys how they did winning the tournament, so Brendan Todd was 11th green and regulation rate during the week that he won. Brian Gay was T15. Lucas Herbert was well below PGA Tour average in green and regulation hit. So that suggests to me that he basically just putted his way to a victory. And that's kind of what he did. And he was T6 in putts per round that week. Brendan Todd and Brian Gay, though, they still hit a lot of putts too. So this kind of suggests that I'm looking for a putter this week. So, and then the last thing, I try to estimate proximity rates at Port Royal. This was done basically assuming no wind. I kind of just went to Google Earth and looked at approximate tee shot locations. So basically what I found was there's a lot of shorter approach shots here. So less than 125 yards. There's about one out of every 3 shots, about 6 per round is under 125 yards. About 6 is about 125 to 150. Only one I found is about 150 to 175. None from 175 to 200. and 200 plus is about 5 per round. Those are usually the par fives, which are very gettable. There's also 3 par threes that are long too. I think one of them is 235 yards, and it's like 216. And I think the other par 3 is like 200 as well. So, and into the wind, that can be challenging. So, wind can definitely play a big factor too, as far as the wind. There's also elevation changes. So sometimes, your true yardage isn't what it is on the scorecard. But just in general, I'm looking at shorter irons this week. I think it's going to be a lot of shots under 150 yards. If you do want to look at shots over 200 because of the 3 par threes and some of the par fives, you're basically getting, in my estimation, about 94% coverage. I'm not really worried about mid irons or anything like that. It's just really how you do with your wedges and if you can perform really well on some of the longer par threes. So just in general, I'm looking for a bomber that's, either bomber or really short but accurate guy, kind of the extremes off the tee. I'm looking for a really good putter, particularly in Bermuda. And somebody's proficient with their shorter irons. So why don't we take another break? And then, God help me, we're going to talk about LIV. All right, let's talk about No House Advantage. So No House Advantage changed the game by offering the most dynamic fan sports platform available today. Play pick'em contests versus other people for a shot at winning $250,000 plus in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. You also test your skills versus the house at 20x your entry if all your picks hit. So bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. So sign now with promo code SGPN at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. So make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but where you play. And you won't want to miss out on this. All right. Well, that concludes the Bermuda Championship talk. Why don't we talk about LIV? So this week, and I'm going to just play it straight. I have been tracking just their overall strokes gain data because I figure it's probably just useful information to have. Either these guys are probably going to be playing majors at some point, or they're going to be playing European Tour events. Or just their popularity is going to grow, where Capper and I are just going to have to probably talk about it. And like I said, in a week like this, where the Bermuda Championship is pretty garbage field for PGA Tour standards, this is probably going to draw the most interest. It's a better field, whether you agree with me or not. So I'm going to leave politics aside. We're just going to talk about what has happened and how the teams are. And if you don't like it, I apologize. You can turn the podcast off or the stream off, but we're going to try and break it down, and I'm going to go over with some picks I like. So this is the team championship. It's they're calling it a match play format, which is not really a match play event because the final round between the 4 teams who make it to the finals is all stroke play because it's LIV and they're basically making it up as they go along. They will eventually probably figure out their way and be a little more consistent, but this year, not so much. So how it works is the top 4 teams, which were the 4 aces, led by Dustin Johnson, the Crushers, led by Bryson DeChambeau, the Fireballs, led by Sergio Garcia, and Team Singer, basically the South African team, led by the injured Brandon Grace and Louis Oosthuizen. They're the top 4 teams. They earned a bye to the next round. And then seeds 5 through 12, they all play in the quarterfinals. And how it works is basically Team Smash, led by Brooks Koepka, they're going to choose their opponent of everybody else, and it's going to work all the way down until everybody is paired up. And then they're going to play a match. There will be 2 singles matches. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to pick them. They might not even know how they're going to pick them either. And there's going to be the other team is going to be alternate shot between 2 guys. And there's no ties, no halves. So the team that gets 2 points in their little matches will advance to the next round. And then we'll get to 8 teams. Once again, the 4 aces will have the first pick to decide who they want to play. I'm not sure if they actually can pick a team that got a bye, which would be interesting because I might want to pick the South Africans. They're not doing very well right now. But if they can't, they'll pick from whoever won their quarterfinal match. Same thing, 2 singles events, 1 foursome event. And then lastly, the championship will be all 4 teams, shotgun start. They will play basically they'll play their own ball, and all the scores count. So in the regular events, usually only 2 or 3 scores count out the team total. Everybody's going to count this week, and that actually might come into play for the big favorite this week because they have a really bad player on their team who might cost them. So, so we're just going to start from the bottom, the odds board or the seeding. We're going to work our way up. If you haven't been paying attention to LIV, I will tell you just in general what they've been doing. I have their numbers, so let's get to it. So 12 seed is the Niblets. That's a terrible name. They are led by Harold Varner III. This team is terrible. Harold Varner has not been playing very well since he came over from the PG Tour. He did well in the Bangkok event. I think he lost by 5 shots to Chikara, who just played great that week. But he's really the only one doing anything. James Pyatt also did well in Bangkok. He's been playing a little better lately. He lost strokes in Chicago, gained about 5.5 on the field at Bangkok, gained a little bit at Jeddah, but he also has lost in Boston. He lost 17 strokes to the field that week. He's not a very good player. Neither is Hudson Swafford, who I guess is the second best player on that team. He's lost a whopping 1.5 strokes to the field in 7 events on LIV. And Turk Pettit, who he has lost how many the last 4 events? He's lost 25 strokes to the field the last 4 events. Kind of speaks to how shallow kind of these LIV events, the talent pool is. They stink. I would expect them to get bounced very quickly unless Harold Varner. I don't know. I don't see a way that they win. So don't bet on them this week. The 11th seed is the Australian team, which is interesting because Cam Smith is on that team. I'm pretty sure that if Cam Smith and Leishman were on the team for this whole thing, they'd probably be much higher, probably maybe a 7 or 6 seed. They had some pretty poor players starting out for them. Smith and Leishman kind of helped, but honestly, Cam Smith has not been very good the last 2 tournaments. He was pretty bad in Bangkok, only gained a little bit on the field in Jeddah. Mark Leishman has really disappointed too. His best showing was at Bangkok. Otherwise, he lost 3.5 strokes in Jeddah, lost 7.5 in Chicago. He's been pretty bad. He's kind of continuing some of his poor play that he saw from out of him the last couple of years on the PG Tour. Matt Jones has been just awful. Hopefully the lawsuit kind of works out for him, but he was bad in Jeddah. Lost strokes at Boston. He has been very good. And Wade Ormsby, who just he's probably going to get replaced by somebody. He's been pretty bad. He's been lost about 1.5 per round to the field since he's been on. So, I mean, they could surprise. I mean, you have Cam Smith, you have Mark Leishman, Matt Jones can putt. I forgot to mention too, they're playing at Doral, by the way. So this is basically a longer golf course. Bombers Paris, we saw at the WGC Cadillac. Usually longer hitters tend to prevail there. A lot of water. Bermuda as well. We did see Patrick Reed win there one year. I think that might have been a little bit of a fluke. Otherwise, it's mostly just the Bombers. They don't really have Bombers on this team, but they could hit a lot of putts, so they could surprise, especially if they catch, I don't know, maybe Team Torque. That's another really weak team that we're going to talk about a little bit. Otherwise, though, probably not going to do very well this tournament, so I don't expect much of them. All right, 10 seed Team Cleeks, led by Martin Kiner. Another pretty weak team. Richard Bland's been okay lately, though. He was pretty good in Bangkok. He was all right in Chicago. Didn't play all that great in Jeddah, but just, overall, he's been probably their best player, at least in the short term. Martin Keimer actually got out to a pretty good start in Jeddah, but he got injured. So we don't really know his status there. Laurie Cantor, he played all right in Chicago and Bangkok. That's a guy who, I know he chased the paychecks, but just given how the Ryder Cup is for the European team, that might have been a guy who might have wanted to stay because I think he might have a chance to make it. He was, he was cranking out some top 10s, top 15s. He was a solid European Tour player, but he decided to go get the money. And Graham McDowell has been an unmitigated disaster pretty much the entire tenure of LIV between some of the quotes he's made. He was the former captain, I think, of the Nibliks. They got rid of him, and he ended up on the Cliques. He's been terrible. So, again, I don't really see much hope with them. I don't think there's really much to discuss. Ironheads, that's the Kevin Na team, which who knows what his health is. He apparently was on his deathbed, I think, the last couple of weeks. And then the rest of his team is, guys from Thailand who we haven't really heard of. They've had some of their moments, though. Pachar was pretty good at Bedminster. Sewon Kim, he was pretty good in Bangkok. Saddam was pretty good in Boston. But, I mean, these are not household names. Sewon Kim actually lost 20 strokes to the field in Boston. That's hard to do. They all play pretty poorly, except for maybe Sewon Kim and Jeddah. This is not somebody probably is going to threat. Over their last 3 tournaments combined, the team has lost about half a shot to the field. And most of that is just because Sewon Kim did well in Bangkok. So probably nothing to see there. The 8 seed, the High Flyers. So this is Phil Mickelson's team. This team's actually kind of interesting. So I think one of the guys who actually benefited, I mean, all these guys benefited financially from going to LIV, but I think one of the guys actually benefited from going to LIV seemed to be Matthew Wolff. He was terrible on the PGA Tour. There was always rumors about his mental health and how happy he was on the PGA Tour. And honestly, he's been actually pretty good on LIV. He lost by a couple shots at Bedminster. He gained 6 shots on the field at Portland, gained 3.6 at Boston, gained 5.5 at Jeddah. He's been playing well. And say what you want, maybe that's a move for him that was actually good for him. So, but he's really the only one that's actually playing pretty good golf. I mean, you have a lot of names here, but they haven't been playing good. I mean, Phil Mickelson has been terrible. The only event he's been really good was Chicago. Otherwise, he's hemorrhaging strokes to the field. Bernd Wiesberger has been a little better lately, but that's a dude who can't putt, and he just hasn't really seen what he's gotten going. And Cameron Tringali started out okay. He was pretty good in Chicago, but his last term has been a disaster. So, I mean, that could be a team that surprises if Tringali can kind of get things going. Maybe Phil can start to play a little better. Matthew Wolff's been pretty good. I mean, he's a bomber, so that's somebody that's going to play in their favor. This team has a lot of length too, so that could possibly play well at Doral. But we'll see. I don't mind them. I like them, the High Flyers, better than Team Torque, who's the 7th seed. That's a one-man team with Joaquin Niemann, who's been great. Great at Boston, great in Jeddah, great in Chicago. The rest of his team is terrible. Scott Vincent has lost about 0.8 strokes in his tenure on LIV. Hideo Tanihara lost about 1.6 per round, and Jediah Morgan's lost 1.8. That's a bad team. If any books do decide once they pick the teams, which probably not, because I think they're picking day of, which stinks. I would have loved there to be a betting market of betting some teams. I would bet against Torque easily, especially because, I mean, Neiman can't do it all. And just between Vincent, Tanihara, and Jediah Morgan, they stink. So I don't spend much on them. The 60s and Majestics, they've really been leaking oil. They were good up until about Boston. Lee Westwood, Stenson, Horsfield, and Poulter. Since then, it's really only been mostly Westwood doing decent golf. Stenson has really cratered ever since Boston. Horsfield has lost strokes to the field in 4 straight. Poulter's isn't really doing much in the league. He's about maybe average to a slightly above average. This team doesn't have a whole lot of length either. I don't think they're going to be very good for Doral. So, don't really like them. The 5 seed Team Smash. I can't get over these names sometimes. Anyways, Brooks Koepka's team. Obviously, they made a big move in Jeddah. Koepka won the events. Peter Uline lost in a playoff. They got Jason Kokrak, who's a name, played really well in Boston, but otherwise his tenure on LIV has been pretty unremarkable. I mean, honestly, I know we give Chase Koepka a lot of crap, but he's actually been decent on LIV. He gained 2 strokes in the field in Bedminster. He gained 4.5. Chicago's gained 2.5 in Jeddah. He's actually been kind of a solid role player. He's kind of you know what? I'm not even going to make a comparison because I'll probably get roasted for it. He's been okay, though. The problem, though, with this team is that it's Peter Uline at the end of the day, who's played well. I'll admit it. I mean, for LIV standards. I mean, he gained 11 strokes at London. He gained 8.5 at Chicago. He gained 7.5 in Jeddah. I mean, there's been some clankers from him, too. He lost 9 in Boston, lost 7 in Portland. But it's Peter Uline at the end of the day. It's Chase Koepka at the end of the day. Kokrak, it doesn't seem like he's, I don't know. He might not have it anymore now he's gotten paid. I mean, they do have the first pick. They're probably going to pick either the Ironheads or the Cleeks or Niblets. So they'll probably make it into the next round. If they run into a team like the South Africans, maybe they're stuck with them. I could see probably the other 3 maybe shying away from Koepka's team because they have been playing so well. Unless the thing is all rigged, which it very well might be. And all these matches are already preordained, but let's speculate. Let's play it straight. Let's be fair, I guess. I guess if they're one of those teams, I probably wouldn't pick the Koepka team. So maybe they get paired up with the South African team. Maybe they make the finals. So that could be someone right now. I think their odds are like 9-1. They're shallow. I mean, but this is only 12 teams. If you got 9-1 to play basically just, it's one round of golf where everybody's scores counts. Do I think they're actually going to win? Probably not. But, if you want someone to hold like a 9-1 ticket on a team to make the finals, that might not be a bad bet. So that might be one you might want to, maybe consider. The 4 seed, the South Africans, like I mentioned, they're the 4 seed because of pretty much everything they did the first 5 tournaments. I mean, LIV basically pushed it to the moon that South Africans swept the podium. Charles Schwartz won. Brandon Grace came second. Louis played well. I think Henny Dupleix before he got dumped on the team. He also played well. Brandon Grace did well in Portland. So, and then they've just been kind of solid ever since. Louis was playing pretty good golf up until about Chicago. Brandon Grace was playing actually really well until Bangkok. But then he got hurt in Bangkok after, I think he was like 5 under, I think after the first day, and then he had to withdraw. Terrible in Jeddah, so you wonder what his health is. Louis Oosthuizen also has not been playing well ever since I kind of went international. Maybe that hasn't been all that great for him. Schwartzel's kind of fallen off the map. I mean, he's been okay. He played up well in Chicago and Jeddah. Did not play well in Boston and Bangkok, though. So, but the problem with Stinger, though, is that, they're, Brandon Grace might not be healthy. And Sean Norris has been one of the worst players on LIV. The only time he gained strokes in the field was in London. Other than that, he lost 14 strokes in the field in Portland, lost 6.4 in Boston, lost 7.5 in Chicago, lost 6.5 last week in Jeddah. That's going to cost them, especially if they run into if they're stuck holding the bag with if Brooks Koepka teams make to the semifinals there. I think they're going to go down. So right now they're also 9-1. I don't like them at all. I think if you're going to want to go for someone 9-1, you're probably going to go with Koepka's team smash. All right. The 3 seed, the Fireballs, they've been playing pretty good golf ever since basically Boston. Sergio's been really good for 4 of the last 5 events. He's gained at least 5.5 strokes on the field. Abe Answer's kind of been hit or miss, but he's been solid. Gained 6.6 in Boston, gained 2.5 in Bangkok, gained 5 and 3.5 in Jeddah. Chikara, the only time he's really done anything was when he won. Otherwise, he hasn't been all that great. So that might be a little bit of a liability that holds him back. Carlos Ortiz, though, he was really good at the beginning. Now he's kind of tailed off. So this is kind of basically a 2-man team between Sergio and Answer. But I think Chikara is kind of the wild card. He's a really talented kid. I mean, we obviously saw the upside. If he just can put it together for 3 days and catch some magic, that can be a really dangerous team. Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably make the finals. It's a pretty talented team. Do I think they're going to win at plus 450? I don't think so. That's not really my favorite bet on the board. Um, probably will pass, but I mean, like legitimately, they have been playing well for live standards. So, the two seats of Crushers. What's funny about them is that I mean they're led by Bryson Shambo. He has not been nearly the best player on that team. The best players on the team has definitely been Paul Casey. He's doing Paul Casey things. He's just hitting the ball really well. Can't make a putt. But he gained 6 strokes at Bedminster, gained 6.5 at Bangkok, gained 5.5 at Jeddah. Anirban Lahiri has also been pretty decent too. He lost in a playoff in Boston. He played well in Jeddah as well, gained 3.5 strokes on the field. Charles Howell III is kind of just doing Charles Howell the third things. It's nothing flashy, but solid. Gained 4.5 at Bangkok, gained 2.6 in Boston, 4.5 in Jeddah. Like just gaining strokes on the field, just kind of like what he did in the PG Tour, where you just kind of always seem to finish inside the top 40. It's a solid team. And then you got Bryson too, who, he hasn't been playing well. It's been fine, but he hasn't been playing good. I think we need to remember with him that he's been battling an injury all year. We're not sure if he actually, I think it was a torn labrum. Maybe he's not fully recovered from that. Although, he finished second in the long drive contest. So I don't know. Maybe he's over it. Maybe just is more concerned about his social media following than actually playing good golf. Who knows? But overall, it's a good team. They're plus 400, kind of like that. I think they're going to win whoever they play. I mean, they're going to get they're going to be able to pick probably not a very good team coming out of the quarterfinals because they're the 2 seed. Maybe there's a couple upsets. Maybe the high flyers go out first. Maybe, Brooks, team doesn't show up and they can get lucky and get a decent opponent. I think they're going to make the finals. I think it's a solid team. I think they're all playing pretty good. They all gained strokes on the field in Jeddah. I think 4-1. I kind of like that bet. So, and then the 1 seed, the 4 aces. Dustin Johnson's team. I mean, they have been, the best team all year. They have won the team competition, I think, 3 or 4 times. DJ won. Which one he won? Boston. Patrick Reed has also been really good. He gained 12 strokes in Portland, gained 7.5 in Bangkok, 9 at Bedminster. The problem with that team, though, is so Taylor Gooch let's talk about Taylor Gooch. He was playing great through 4 events, and the last 4 events have not gone all that well. He's bad in Chicago. He was okay in Jeddah, but he's not doing what he really was doing at the beginning of the year. And, I'm a little concerned about him and Durrell. It's a longer golf course. He's got a little pop off the tee, but it's not like, really good. He's a little erratic sometimes too, from what I remember on the PGA Tour. A lot of water hazards might cost him, but I think what's the real anchor on that team, and not in a good way, Pat Perez, just terrible. He is riding the coattails of the R3, making a lot of money despite some really, really, really atrocious golf. That's going to cost him, especially with its all 4 scores count. Can't hide him like he did in the regular events. And even in the match play events, like let's say, I'm going to imagine DJ and Reed will probably end up playing singles because they are the best talented players. I think the team at Gooch and Perez is probably a loss. And that means if DJ has a bad day or Reed has a bad day, they go out early. So they're plus 200. I don't like those odds at all. And I think they're not going to win even if they make the finals. So listen, like I mentioned, I understand that some people don't really want to take this seriously. And honestly, I don't really take it seriously either sometimes, but it is an event. You can gamble on it. And so look at the odds board. I think I like Crushers at 4-1. Paul Casey and DeChambeau's team. I think with DeChambeau's length, I think it's going to be an advantage of Durrell. Charles Howell III's got some pop off the tee. Casey's got some pop off the tee too. They're all playing really good right now at the moment. Kind of like them. And maybe Koepka's team at 9-1. I think they can at least make the finals. I think there's a decent path for them. They're going to be able to pick their opponent in the first round. They're probably going to get, I think, the South African team, probably because they're going to be left over. And I can't imagine the other 3 teams are going to want to pick them. Again, assuming this is all, legitimate, which it very well might not be. Probably might not be. And I just wasted a half hour of your time. But I think they're going to make the finals, and you can hold 9-1 on them. So, all right. So that's it. Thank you for putting up with me talking about LIV for a half hour. Hope you enjoyed the show. I will be back tomorrow night with Boston Capper. We'll get back to our regular scheduled program. We'll talk about the PGA Tour, talk about the Bermuda Championship. We'll have our special guest, Matt Gannon, on. He's our newest writer on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. He will join us to break down the betting card. So with that, hope you have a good night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.